Come on. Get in.
Shotgun. I'm gonna take this city back, Karen.
Where do we start?
We need an army.
Marvel has finally given us a proper television series after starting their Disney Plus series with the MCU. Daredevil Born Again is back with episode 9, the finale for season 1, and holy crap was this thing a work of art. Absolutely bringing in the brutality of the Punisher and Daredevil together, showing us gore, being violent, and not stepping away from that violence like they do in other projects. They finally gave us something that feels like it's supposed to. It gives us that reminiscence of the old Punisher series and the Daredevil series from Netflix, and I love what they did. The Punisher was amazing, Daredevil was amazing, and they just gave me so much excitement for being a Daredevil fan, and I'm just really looking forward to what they're going to be doing in season 2, especially because they set up the Defenders returning, other vigilantes returning, because Matt's going to need all their help to take down Mayor Fisk and his anti-vigilante task force. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down this entire episode, going over everything that happened during it, as well as talking about its connections to the MCU, the Punisher special, and what might be coming next for this project. So let's go into it with the first part of the episode being Vanessa meeting with Poindexter a year ago, setting up the events that led into Foggy's death. And it's all because this manipulative woman went to the psychiatric facility to go to Bullseye and get him to sign these papers so that he can get out of the facility and be a free man once again. Now you can see in this scene how she's manipulating him, making him go back to his psychotic ways. There are drugs here that are keeping his psychotic tendencies to a low, and she pushes them away to make it so that this man will break, so he'll get out of it and then he'll be free to be that assassin for her, which I still think is surprising after the fact that he literally tried to kill her during Daredevil Season 3. She knew he was the person for the job because he never misses. She was meeting with him because she wanted him to take out Foggy and Dumb Benny, who had a case that could reveal her whole operations. The whole point of her getting him out of there is because she had money laundering in Red Hook Port, and she did not want anyone finding out about that. Because Red Hook Port, turns out, after we find out from Matt and Karen later in the episode, was a free port, meaning it was not under the New York City's jurisdiction, and that they could not actually prosecute Dumb Benny and get him thrown in jail. So that was Foggy's whole case, which would have revealed what was going on at Red Hook Port with Vanessa laundering money, selling her art, and other gangs using it and smuggling stuff in and out, which is also why Fisk was redeveloping the whole area. You know, they were already moving millions through there, and now with this redevelopment and it being able to put like passageways and hidden places, they could make billions, and they could be richer than they ever were before. So we finally got the master plan for Red Hook Pier. It was all to line their own pockets with more money, and the Mayor Fisk still being the kingpin at heart. Plus, the reason Poindexter was able to get out of that facility and what Vanessa was showing him was a way to get him acquitted because of the corruption in the FBI that we saw during Daredevil Season 3. With Nadeem working with Fisk, who ended up getting killed by Bullseye, but they set it up to show that the corruption in the FBI made it so that both Fisk and Poindexter were charged for no reason, and which in the end got Fisk acquitted, and she was doing the same for Poindexter. So just seeing everything here, going back to Daredevil Season 3, all those events that played out, even though Poindexter was pretending to be Daredevil, he mentally snapped. I think the whole purpose of getting him out was saying, hey, the only reason this guy snapped was because of these events. So I like how she was the one that set everything up. She was the one behind it all, and she wanted to use Bullseye as her assassin to take out Foggy to save her operations. So the way they did this was really interesting, and I love how they dealt with this, because, you know, we all thought it was Kingpin who did it. It made sense. But because he was away during the time, it made even more sense that it was Vanessa, and at the end of the day, they made Vanessa the Kingpin as well. You got Mrs. and Mr. Kingpin taking over the city. Now that they're ruling it by being the mayor of New York City, they're still the Kingpins at heart, and I love what they're doing because it just shows the manipulative attitude from both of them, the seriousness, the conniving, and I can't wait to see how they dive deeper into it in Season 2. But then after that, we end up going to present day, which has Matt in the hospital calling out Karen's name, which 100% made Heather upset because we saw a few episodes ago that she seemed to be bothered by Karen and Matt's previous relationship. So I feel like this is just her thinking that he loves Karen more than her, which he does, but they're not in that kind of relationship anymore, and they kind of poke fun at it during the episode where we have her and Frank meeting up again, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But in this hospital scene, we do have Heather and Kirsten. They're making sure Matt's okay, but Heather is still in denial that nothing is wrong with Mayor Fisk, and that ends up coming back around at the end of the episode where she ends up becoming the commissioner for mental health for New York City. She's working for Fisk now, and I feel like that's probably going to lead to her death next season and a painful moment for Matt as he loses the woman he loves. But also at this moment, because at the end of the episode, we do see him going to form his own team of vigilantes and good cops and people that take down Mayor Fisk, that he won't actually be around to be with Heather next season, and that he'll just disappear on her and she won't know why. But we also have Matt here telling them about how Vanessa was the one that ordered the hit on Foggy, giving us those details and having Kirsten fill in some information about how Foggy was filing a motion to dismiss the trial. So all setting up what was really going on, setting up Heather's disbelief in them, and setting up that conflict for Heather and Matt, but also having Kirsten probably slowly figure out who Matt is. Because by the end of this episode, she doesn't seem to know that Matt is Daredevil, but Matt is the one that gets her that file. So she's probably going to be bringing that up next season, possibly have it targeting Vanessa and them, but we will see, because I could put her in the crosshairs and get her possibly killed next season as well if something dangerous goes down. But I kind of hope that we see her more interacting with Matt and possibly finding out he's Daredevil just to see how that bond grows. But we will see. We still have a lot of stuff to come from that season, but the hospital scene was just done so well, with Heather kind of doubting Matt, making it seem like Matt's crazy, but Kirsten actually somewhat realizing what Matt's talking about and having the two different mentalities where his friend believes him, but the person he loves doesn't. So really like what they did, and it just set up conflict. So looking forward to seeing how that dives deeper in season 2. Then we have Fisk and Vanessa talking, where Fisk actually knows that Vanessa put the hit on Foggy. And it seems like he's proud of her at this point. Like I said before, the whole idea of Fisk redeveloping the port was so that they can make billions. You know, they were making millions, but now they can make billions. All setting up how he was using this advantage of being mayor to fuel their criminal underworld, make him the kingpin once again, and make him more powerful than he ever was before. And I do like how, we have both Mr. and Mrs. Kingpin. They're the ones that are going to be taking over the city, and they both look proud of each other, which is just so cool to see. Then we have Fisk sending his anti-vigilante task force after all vigilantes. Well, he wants to lock down the city, all to make sure he takes out all of them, which in the end will just make sure that there's no one to take him down. That's the plan. It's not that the vigilantes are unsafe for New York City, it's that he just doesn't want anyone messing with his plan whatsoever. And I like when he sends everyone away. You have Buck talking about Matt's condition, and how Buck points out this could complicate things because of Matt being Daredevil. They can't out him, they can't do anything because they gotta worry about the vigilante who saved Fisk. But Fisk points out that if Matt Murdock dies, he'll die a hero rather than being a vigilante. So they send Buck to go kill him. But that also means that Buck knows that Matt is Daredevil. So that's another person to know his secret identity. And so that's really interesting to see, because Fisk hasn't gone around telling everyone, but he has told some people. So his secret isn't perfectly safe, but it's still kind of out there to possibly get leaked to other people. So I'm very interested in how they dive more into that plot as well, because that is a big part of Matt's secret. You know, no one knows he's Daredevil, but it seems like that secret's slowly going to come out. And we also have Fisk trying to take out anyone who's not loyal to him, and only loyalists are allowed. So very showing that Fisk is slowly taking over the city even more by keeping people around that will agree with him. Even though you have Commissioner Gallo going over to talk to Sheila to kind of get her on his side, which ends up turning out that Sheila betrays him as well. Even though she doesn't seem that heartless, she's obviously scared and watching out for herself because she's scared for her life, knowing who Fisk is. And you can kind of see later in the episode when Fisk talks about how Gallo has retired after he killed him, that she's scared. She is scared for her life, which might be that key to helping Matt in the end, where she's going to flip and join their side to help them take down Mayor Fisk. But then we have Buck going to take out Matt in the hospital. You know, he brings a little get well soon gift to make it look like he's actually visiting him, but he has a needle to actually take him out so he dies peacefully. All to make it look like it was an accident, he succumbed to his injuries. But when the city goes black out, Matt was already planning on escaping. He knew Buck was coming, and he was out of there, making it so that Buck wasn't able to assassinate him in his sleep. But also just showing how Buck is that lackey, he is Bullet in the comics, and how he's getting ready to be that hitman for Fisk, and how he's going to be that man who goes and deals with the stuff so Fisk doesn't get his hands completely dirty. Even though he does get his hands pretty dirty with blood this episode. But the setup in this episode for all the conflict that was to come was just absolutely done amazingly. Just having Mayor Fisk have his plans start to enact, putting the city on a blackout, making it so everyone has an excuse to hate vigilantes and the city, and needing Mayor Fisk's anti-vigilante task force because the city is in complete array after this blackout, which tends to happen in all kind of situations where we see blackouts in TV shows. The city starts looting, people go crazy, and I like how they set this up because it's all for Fisk to manipulate people into believing that his anti-vigilante task force is a good thing. Even though these bastards are walking around with Punisher logos on them, he still is using them to his advantage and making it seem like he's trying to actually keep the city safe, even though they're not doing that whatsoever, because they literally kill a looter, put his toque over his face, and say, hey, look, he was a vigilante. Like, seriously? Like, the city's not stupid, right? Like, they might be able to buy people off, but other people aren't stupid, and they're gonna realize what they're doing. So obviously, the only way to take down Mayor Fisk is to unite the people in New York City, get the vigilantes involved, and all try to get him taken down. So I really like how they're doing that, because it just sets up how dangerous this man is, how dangerous his task force is. And I will say, I'm surprised not some of the major task force characters died other than Cole North this episode. Which, speaking of that, we do have the moment of Matt walking into his apartment and having Frank being there, which turns out that Karen was the one that called Frank to go check on Matt. Relating back to The Punisher season 1, where Karen and Frank were working together during all of that. So I do love how she's the one in touch with him, because she knew Bullseye escaped and she wanted to make sure that her friend was going to be taken care of. So it just shows Karen coming back into the picture, and I just love how they did it, because she has a connection with both Matt and Frank, and I just love how they kind of teased that during this episode. But we're almost there. We'll talk about it in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself, but it was just so good. I love the moment when Matt walks in and Frank turns around and says, is that a new costume? Nightgown man? Like, that is hilarious. That's like a nice little back and forth, and I like what they did. And then you have the cops coming in wearing their Punisher logos to take down Matt Murdock. Not Daredevil. No, they're there to take down Matt Murdock because he had escaped and Fisk wanted him dead. Which I don't think the cops actually knew why Fisk wanted him dead, but obviously Buck did, but the cops didn't. So, you know, he's still keeping that secret a little bit, because I think he needs to keep that secret just to, you know, hold it over Matt. But he's not going to reveal it, because then he would get rid of that kind of song and dance that's going on. You know, they can't have their back and forth if he's outed. So he wants to play that game, and he wants to go after him, but he doesn't want to completely out him just yet. But that whole scene in Matt's apartment was cinema. Absolute cinema. Having Matt drop and start beating the crap out of guys, and then the Punisher kick down the door and just start blasting them. Dude is taking out these dirty cops left, right, and center. And you know, you do have Matt still saying, hey, Frank, don't do that, because he doesn't want him murdering all these people. Frank doesn't listen, of course, because he's the Punisher. He's going to do things his own way. But it just sets up this really brutal fight within here, where Matt is still making these guys bleed. Like, it is brutal. And this is where I was happy that Disney did not shine away from the blood and gore, because that is, you know, you have the Punisher here. You have to have that. So I'm so glad that they kept these moments in, because it feels like the Punisher. It feels like a more brutal street-level Daredevil, and it's just setting up what we could get in the MCU. Like, this is stuff we want. We don't always want PG movies. We don't want everything that kind of playing it safe. We want stuff that will cross the line. We want stuff that's not always meant for kids, but meant for adults as well. So I'm glad they kept this in there. And also, the whole time I was thinking, like, oh, damn, Matt, your apartment is destroyed. This is gonna suck. Until they freaking blow it up completely, and the whole place goes kablooey, which also ends up having Matt's whole secret lair of his Daredevil suits get blown up as well, which means he has no more gear other than the stuff he's wearing on him, which would also explain why we're getting a new black suit in Daredevil Born Again Season 2 that has the double D's on it, meaning he's going to get that more iconic Daredevil suit. I did see in one of the set photos that it looks like it's black on red, so it's most likely that the suit he's currently wearing by the end of the show, he paints black to kind of have that more darker look, so he can go through the shadows a lot easier without the anti-vigilante task force finding him. Plus, that suit definitely resembles more of the Shadowland Stories comic suit, so I really like how they're kind of adding that in there as well. But during this whole fight, we find out that Cole North is the one that killed Hector Ayala. He's the one shooting the Punisher bullets, and I love the whole scene with him, because obviously they beat the crap out of him. Punisher throws a knife through his hand. It's just like it's great moments where he's going to kill him, but Matt still has that hero ideology. He doesn't want to kill Cole North. He doesn't want to murder the man. Even though he kind of hesitates for a moment and Frank wants to kill him, he doesn't, because he still believes in justice. He still wants to uphold the rights of being a hero and not killing people. So I do like how they have that. Even Frank trying to push him a little more, and how the darkness has seeped into Matt. So I love how they put that in there. Obviously, the whole thing goes to shit because the place blows up anyways, but I like how they put that in there. Because if the place didn't blow up and the cops didn't just murder themselves, I feel like Matt would have tried to use Cole North to get his way and turn on Fisk to unravel his whole operation. However, this is so different from the comics, because Cole North was a character that was going after vigilantes. He was going after Daredevil, and eventually, you know, realized Daredevil was right by the very end of the story. They killed him off so soon, but hey, the way they did this was so interesting with the Punisher fanboys that I'm okay with it. Having Matt and Frank just jump off the rooftop with Daredevil save them was a cool moment. And then the best moment comes with Karen showing up. She's finally back after the first episode, and I just loved her story because she's the one that called Frank, right? She's there to protect her friend, and then they go back to Frank's hideout, which is where we kind of figure out that Frank and Karen have kept in touch ever since The Punisher Season 1 and Daredevil Season 2, with the characters interacting with one another. Plus, I really like the moment where Frank's not wanting to help them, doesn't want to follow their crusade, and even calls them Inspector Gadget. You know, a nice little Inspector Gadget moment, but also showing how Frank wants to do things his own way and doesn't want to have to do the no killing rule. With even though Frank's saying he doesn't care, Karen calls him out on his bullshit, knowing that he does care, and when he leaves, he even says, be careful. So showing that Frank, you know, he still has a heart. Everything he's been through, he's still a brutal murderer, but he has a heart. He still cares for Karen, and he even cares for Matt in his own way. And I do like how he's there. And when he finds out where the cops are and how they're in the Red Hook port, he's like, screw this. I'm going to go take things in my own hand, and heads down himself. Which we'll talk about that in a moment, but holy crap, the Punisher. Chef's kiss, beautiful, loved every scene he was in. Both Matt and Frank had such good chemistry throughout this whole episode. It just makes me super excited to see them interact more in the future of the MCU, and you know what Marvel ends up doing with them. Because these are two great characters with two great actors, and we're not done with them. Like, we're not going to stop at Daredevil Season 2. We're not going to stop at a Punisher special. We're going to see more of them, and I just can't wait to see them be implemented in maybe like a movie or other street-level hero stuff. Like, I don't think we need to see them in Avengers or any of the big cosmic stuff, but I would definitely love to see them in more street-level hero stuff, and I just want to see it. Give me more, please, Marvel. Give me more. But now, before we move into Matt and Karen going to the storage locker that has Foggy's files, let's talk about what Buck and Daniel were doing. Because they were blackmailing the New York City Council all in order to enact Safer Streets initiative that Fisk wanted to enact, which obviously would normally not get people's attention because it puts the city under martial law. It has a curfew of 8 p.m. and he's targeting all vigilantes. Now he's using the information he has on some of the counselors to blackmail them for them to support his initiative, which of course makes sense because he wants to use all his power to manipulate people into getting what he wants. And even what they say, it's a hit list. He's going after people, which means that there's probably other people's name on there, like Jack with being swordsman, that he wanted to take down, and who we saw at the end in all those cages that he has laid up in his underground base. So really interesting to see how they kind of set that up in this moment of the episode, but also just teased what's to come in his darker plan. But that's when we get to Matt and Karen in the storage locker looking for the case file that Foggy had to file his motion to dismiss. So I love this moment because we had Matt calling out Karen's heartbeat around Frank, showing that she cares about him, showing that kind of relationship that has been somewhat teased since the Punisher season 1. And I like how they did that because Matt knows it. He knows something there, which we notice when we're watching the scene, but Matt knows it's because of the heartbeats. And then even Karen asks, what about my heartbeat when I said to you? Showing that Karen and Matt still care about each other. You know, they're friends, but they still have that deeper love for one another as well, which does make me feel like could lead to season 2 and Karen possibly dying as well, only because in the comics, Bullseye did kill Karen Page. And if Bullseye is still out there and Karen's going to be a big part of season 2, it just feels like something bad like that might happen. But honestly, we'll see. I really hope they don't go that route because I really love Deborah as Karen and I just want to see more of her. This is also the part where we find out about Foggy's motion to dismiss because of the fact that the Red Hook port was a free port and they can't charge dumb Benny with a crime because they had no jurisdiction there. That's also where we figure out about Fisk developing and all that, but we already went over that. So we'll just kind of push past that because we talked about it. Because that's when we get to the other Red Hook part, which is the Punisher showing up and just taking out cops left and right. Like, this man is on a warpath. And I find it hilarious that when he showed up, they're like, hey, we're not going to use lethal rounds. We want to capture him. And then he just starts absolutely blasting all of them, taking out a bunch of them, and they still didn't kill him. They captured the Punisher because these dumbasses, these seriously dumbasses think they can recruit the Punisher into being on their team because they're doing the same thing. Even though they just don't fully understand what the Punisher stand for whatsoever. And I thought it was interesting that you had all the cops wearing Punisher logos, all of them. So just showing how they're not standing with the law. They're standing outside the law, trying to pretend like they're vigilantes in their own way, which I do love. How you have Powell being the face, the one that's trying to recruit Frank. And I was just really hoping that in this moment, Frank would break out and kill Powell, because I just don't like the guy, and he sucks. They end up getting to this moment of Frank giving his speech. Not exactly the speech like he does in the comics about how cops should be upholding the law, they took an oath and all that, but more of a speech about calling them all clowns, that they're in a circus, because they're admiring a psychopath who goes around and kills a bunch of people. Like, they don't know his pain or his loss. And he ain't gonna serve with them, and he's gonna piss on them instead. So just showing that Frank is not taking their shit. He doesn't think of them at all as good people. Obviously, he doesn't think that they should be admiring him, but by admiring him, he knows that these people are scum. So he's calling them out on it, which just ends up with him getting his ass beat. But I was not expecting them to capture him. I honestly thought they might have killed the Punisher in this moment, but instead they captured him, which I will say is kind of like a weird thing. With everything going on, Like, I don't understand why they captured all the people and put them in cells, why they just didn't kill them, because if they're dead, they don't have to worry about them. You know, just get rid of the bodies, you don't have to deal with these people, and there's no worry about them escaping. But it makes me think that they might have had other plans for them in the future, and that's why they needed to capture them, that we just didn't get that explanation for. And that's kind of my only gripe from this, is like, if you're going to take over the city, if you're going to get rid of people who are opposing you, why would you capture them? Why wouldn't you just kill them all? But I digress. And my little note I had in this section too was, this is the bloodiest Marvel project we've got, which is so true and so fantastic. And one of the big things I've loved about this episode, because they did not shine away from the Punisher being the Punisher. That also leads into the part with Gallo being captured by Fisk's task force and being brought to Fisk himself, and having Fisk calling him out and saying that he's just a cog in a broken machine, and pretty much putting the blame on him for this broken system. When Gallo calls out Fisk for never stopping being the Kingpin, we get the squish seed, where he literally puts his hands on this man's head and rips it in half. I was in shock. My jaw was on the floor. Obviously, I can't show this moment because I would get demonetized, but holy crap. This freaking moment was absolutely insane. I was not expecting him to rip this guy's head in pieces. Like, the Kingpin is brutal. This is brutal, but this is a step in a new direction for Marvel that I never thought they'd cross this line. You know, maybe in like a Blade movie or a Ghost Rider movie, something like that, but not a Disney Plus series. So just seeing them do this was absolutely insane, and I commend Marvel for crossing that line. I kind of wonder how other people are going to be reacting to this who let their kids watch this show, but whoa, as an adult, I appreciated it. But with all that, that's when we kind of get slowly to the end of the episode, where we have Matt and Karen at the Red Hook Pier getting ready to take down Fisk, but Karen telling Matt that he can't. If he goes in there, he'll die. It's so true. There are so many cops in there that will just blast his ass as soon as he steps in there. So of course he can't go take down Fisk at this moment because he will die. I love how Karen is worried about him, talking to him, and making him realize that he can't do this alone and that he's gonna need a team. Which I wrote in my notes, time for a vigilantes team up, because that's exactly what it is. We're most likely going to be getting the Defenders returning with Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and Jessica Jones. We'll probably see Misty Knight, Calling Wing, and maybe Echo, because Echo does have history with Kingpin, and it would make sense for her to return and be more part of this. Plus, I also had a note for Hawkeye maybe returning, either Kate Bishop, Clint Barton, or both, because of the Hawkeye series dealing with the Kingpin. And I would love to see it with Moon Knight showing up. I mean, now we're going into the more brutality stuff. Maybe they'll actually give us more brutality stuff with Moon Knight, like we should have gone during his freaking series, but it would make sense for him to be part of it because he was part of the story of helping Daredevil in the comics. Now, I will say, we would have to find a way to get him to New York City, but I'm pretty sure they just throw his ass in there and be like, yeah, he moved over here for whatever reason, and then he'll be part of it. And, you know, I might be delusional, but I'm hoping that ends up being true. I'm assuming we're going to get Angela Del Toro suiting up with the White Tiger, taking on her uncle's legacy, and being a vigilante, teaming up with Daredevil to help take down Mayor Fisk. Now, obviously, Matt's most likely not going to be approving of this right away, but he's not going to be able to stop her because she's going to keep doing it anyways, and the only way to keep her safe is to bring her in. Then we have the Swordsman being captured by Fisk at the end of the episode. He's locked up, but with the Punisher escaping, he might escape as well and become a vigilante and help Daredevil and the rest of the vigilantes take down Mayor Fisk, because it would make sense. You know, he's already been shown as the Swordsman. They included him so much in the season. That would make sense that he'd return to help be a helping hand in this operation. I highly doubt this will ever happen, but I want it to happen. We could see Spider-Man. I mean, I highly doubt Tom Holland Spider-Man's going to make an appearance only because of Sony. And just because Sony's not going to let them use him for a TV project. But it would make sense. It would honestly make sense for him to appear, especially with his involvement with Daredevil in the comics and their relationship. And I think we all want to see this, a Daredevil and Spider-Man relationship on screen because of them in the comics. So I would just love to see this happen. And, you know, even though it's a high ask and probably something that's not going to happen, I still have hope, just a little bit of hope, and that's all I want to see. And I'm sure there's more vigilantes that could be making an appearance, and other characters that might be kind of out of the blue, some more obscure ones that might show up. Let me know in the comments, who do you want to see? Who do you want to see show up to be on this vigilante team, and who do you think might actually show up? Now we have the moment of Fisk announcing how Gallo retired during this times of crisis, even though he literally killed him, but kind of blaming on this guy that New York City was in absolutely chaos, and the commissioner just fucked off. But that's not what happened, of course, and I found it really interesting how they dealt with this, because it's just using Fisk to manipulate people so that he can enact his Safer Streets initiative, which makes it so that vigilante activity is illegal, there's an 8 p.m. curfew, and they're under martial law. So just setting up the stakes for everyone living in New York City, but also I feel like it's setting up a revolution with the citizens to be going against Mayor Fisk because they don't agree with his anti-vigilante rhetoric. So I really like how they set all that up, and it just makes me really excited for everyone going against Mayor Fisk next season. Then we have Daredevil and Karen Page talking at Josie's and going over everything that's happened to Matt in the last little while. When he was a boy, he thought God took his sight. When he grew up, he thought he was given a special destiny, a purpose that could save his life. And it wasn't the mask that saved him, but his belief in it that saved him. So by putting on the Daredevil mask and believing in himself being a hero, that's what brought him back to light. That's what made him this hero and wanted to do better. But then he thought he was immune to darkness, but he let it creep in. Just showing how the first episodes affected him. He pushed Bullseye off the roof. He wanted to kill him. He let that darkness take over. Everything he argued with Frank about. Because of Foggy's death, he couldn't control it. He let it take in. And I do love how they talk about how since Foggy died, he didn't know who he was anymore, which is just setting up the fact that he doubted himself ever since he pushed Bullseye off. He lost his best friend. The person that believed in him, the person he cared about the most, died in front of him. He couldn't do anything about it. So that tipped him over the edge, pushed him to that darkness. And because he got pushed into that darkness, he didn't know how to recover from it. And because he distanced himself from Karen, he didn't have Foggy anymore. He wasn't ever able to recover until now. Having him realize he needed to come back into the light. He needed to be that hero once again. And I love how Karen tells him that Foggy always believed in him. That Foggy knew that there was a darkness, but there was also the light. He knew who Matt was, and so does she. Just having him realize his friends were always there for him. Foggy might not be with him anymore, but he's always been with him. So I just really love that. And she even says, it's not the dark, it's like 1,000 suns. Which is just kind of showing that at night in New York City, while he's running around, the stars in the sky are 1,000 suns. You know, it's watching over the city. He's not this darkness. He's this bright light that's actually here to save people. So I just love how they put this in there. And they also have the good cops at Josie's who are going to be helping Daredevil take down Fisk. We got Angie Kim. We got Cherry. So they're just setting up the people they're going to be recruiting in order to take down the corrupt cops, the corrupt politicians, and everyone else that's trying to control New York City and take it away from its people. Now with that, we do have everyone being captured in Fisk's little prison, with Jack being there, the Punisher being there, and a bunch of other people that did not agree with Fisk. So I like how they put that in there because it's showing just him being this monster who chains up people who doesn't believe in him. And I like how, again, I don't understand why they kept the Punisher around, but I do like how they have him there chained up more than everyone else because he's a threat. But then that leads into the fact that we had the mid-credits scene that happened with the Punisher being able to break out because of the stupid cop that's there. Like, I'm sitting there like, I'm like, this guy must be a moron. Because the Punisher is talking to Anthony, and he's pretending to honor him, and he breaks the dude's arm and escapes. Like, this guy's an idiot for letting his hand go and shake the Punisher's when the Punisher is a cold stone killer and killed his fellow cops. Like, the fact that he's there is so funny because it just makes me laugh that this cop was so stupid. Even though he idolized the Punisher, he's still so stupid that he thought he could trust him for a moment. And that's also, that mid-credit scene is also setting up the Punisher special. With the Punisher breaking out, I feel like the Punisher special might be coming out before Daredevil Season 2 or right after, where we're going to have the Punisher going a warpath throughout New York City as he fights back against the anti-vigilante task force and Mayor Fisk. Either that or he broke out and is now going to end up running back in and finding Matt Murdock to team up with him and help him take down Mayor Fisk because now he's pissed with everything going on. And then that Punisher special will take place after Daredevil Season 2 and the events that play out there. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm excited for that Punisher special. I want to see John go kick some asses, Frank Castle once again. And, like, I'm ready. Now, one of the other things we see at the end of this episode, though, is we see that Kirsten has the file from Matt and Karen for dismissing the trial, which could end up being her finding out that Matt is Daredevil, kind of putting the pieces together, how they're able to figure that out, and what Matt's doing, and why she hasn't heard from him, especially in Season 2 if he's out just being Daredevil and not being Matt Murdock. So we could be getting that revealed there, but we could also be getting her possibly getting in the crosshairs of Vanessa and Fisk because of what's going on with that trial. You know, they didn't want it getting out, so they killed Foggy, and now Kirsten has it and possibly could get in the crosshairs as well. And they also show Poindexter being on the loose, so that's meaning his involvement in Season 2 is probably going to be Matt finding him, kicking his ass, throwing him back in jail, or doing something with him. Because there's no way in hell they'll team up. He's going to go after him, and he's going to stop him, because he cannot team up with the man who killed his best friend. So we'll see what happens with him, but we're getting an eventual conflict with Bullseye once again in Season 2, and I can't wait to see it. But honestly, an awesome series that actually ties into both the Thunderbolts and Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, with Thunderbolts, the way it ties in is because we've been kind of asking the question why no one's helping fight back against the Void in New York City, how it's just wreaking havoc during that movie. And it's mostly because now that we see that Fisk has his Safer Streets initiative, vigilantes can't operate without the fear of being caught and thrown in jail, which would make sense that they're not helping in this situation. And Valentina, after recruiting the Sentry and recruiting the Thunderbolts to work for her as her sanctioned heroes, that is where they're able to operate because they're recognized under the law. And they're not vigilantes, they're actually heroes that are sanctioned by the government. So I feel like that's what's going on there with those characters and why they're being involved in this and why we're not seeing any other vigilante throughout there. So I do really hope we do get a mention of the Safer Streets initiative and maybe having Bucky being like, what the hell is this shit? Why is this here? And, questioning what's going on. Now, the way it connects to Spider-Man Brand New Day is because that movie's taking place during the events of Avengers Doomsday. Because it's taking place simultaneously, Spider-Man's going to be more of a grounded story with Peter Parker focusing on being Spider-Man, the vigilante in New York City. Which means, and with everything else going on with no one remembering him and him having to deal with stuff by himself, now he's going to have to deal with this anti-vigilante law that he doesn't have to worry about an anti-vigilante task force going after him. And I feel like that might be a big thing that's happening in this movie with him having to deal with Mayor Fisk, which we might get a cameo from Kingpin. He might appear on screen, not like interacting with Spider-Man, but like a news broadcast or something along those lines to set up the anti-vigilante task force, the Safer Streets initiative, how Spider-Man has to be safe and avoid the cops so that they don't try to throw his ass in jail. But honestly, we'll see. I'm excited for the street level stuff. I love street level heroes, so just kind of going more into it with Daredevil and Daredevil Born Again Season 2, like, I'm excited. As a fan of that kind of stuff, I'm glad we're finally getting more of it. Like, I do love, the big cosmic stuff. We get to see the cool events, but I always like the stuff focused on street level stuff because it feels more relatable. Because you look at some heroes like Daredevil, other than having superpowers, he's just a man. He doesn't have super speed, he doesn't have super durability, but he's a man fighting. You got the Punisher, he's a man, he just shoots guns. And it feels like it's more relatable to be a hero rather than these big cosmic beings fighting in space. So I do love seeing that. Now, with the end of the season, I kind of ask, like, is it a good season? Yes, it is. I do feel like my only really big problem is that they kind of wasted Muse. Like, they didn't use his superpowers. They didn't do any of that, and they killed him so quickly. I thought he was going to be a bigger threat, but I do really like what they did with the way they reshot the season, having episode 1 be a new scene and the last 2 episodes being brand new so that we can get more of a cohesive story with those points, but the Muse stuff still worked for a good chunk of it. Now, we could have Muse coming back, being revived somehow, and, him being more of a threat with his inhuman powers, which will probably get turned to mutant powers. We'll have to wait to see. That's my only big problem with that, as well as, like, I've seen people talk about how Kirsten and Cherry were wasted, and I kind of agree. I feel like they weren't as utilized as they should be, and I feel like maybe Kirsten should have realized that Matt was Daredevil in this season, or something along those lines. I feel like they might have a bigger role to play in Season 2, with everything going on with the Safer Streets initiative, and Daredevil putting together his team. However, highlights out of the season is obviously Daredevil and Punisher meeting in 2 episodes, and having great moments with both. Karen Page and Foggy Nelson appearing. Even though Foggy died, it was still like a really good scene with everything going on there, and Karen coming back in the final episode was absolutely fantastic, and everything with Bullseye was great. Like, just really cool to bring this character back from Season 3, bring him back to be a proper Bullseye, and then also bringing him back for Season 2, because there have been set photos, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And then Vanessa and Fisk were just absolutely fantastic, like, great chemistry, great brutality, and just showing how they're the kingpins of New York. And I cannot wait to see what they do in Season 2 with these characters and how they dive deeper into the storyline. What did you think of this episode? What did you think of the moments during it? What was your favorite? And, let me know what else you want to talk about in the comments down below, because I am so excited about this episode. Honestly, one of my favorite episodes out of all the Disney Plus series, and I just love what they did this season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button. You can stay up to date with my Marvel, DC, anime, and all my other breakdowns, which I did do one on The Last of Us, and I will be covering that show weekly for the next few weeks, so make sure you stay tuned for that if you're a Last of Us fan. Plus, I did a Jurassic World breakdown recently too. I'll put it at the end of this video, so you can check it out if you're a fan of Jurassic World Chaos Theory. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later when it's time to break down more TV and movies.